And we welcome you into the Marina Variety Store Restaurant at 17 Lockwood Drive in downtown Charleston for the Coaches Show with the head coach Brent Thompson of the Citadel Bulldogs. I'm Luke Morrow alongside the head coach here from the Marina Variety Store and Restaurant with you for the next hour, talking Citadel football to recap the historic win this past week against Georgia Tech and get ready for a rivalry game coming up this weekend here in town with Charleston Southern. Good evening, Coach. How are you?
I'm well. I haven't heard that intro music in a while, and I was just sitting here reminiscing about. It reminds me of an old sitcom that used to be on called Coach.
Yes.
One of the best sitcoms ever out there. I really enjoyed it. I was just sitting here reminiscing about that. So, but no, all is good. We've had a good week so far, and coming off a big win, we've got to find a way to kind of get our feet back on the ground.
What was that Craig T. Nelson? I think was in Coach.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. You resemble him. I'm kidding.
I wish I was as tall.
I'm kidding.
Maybe Luther.
Of course, the Georgia Tech win on Saturday. We'll spend plenty of time talking about that tonight, but I just want to dive right in. You come off that win Saturday against Georgia Tech, first ever win against ACC, an ACC team for the Citadel program. What have the last couple days been like for you?
Well, it was just getting back on the bus was pretty hectic. You know, weeding my way through all the fans there. I had a permanent grin on my face probably most of the time right there. Took a lot of pictures. Enjoyed the moment. I actually walked back out onto the field after we had done everything that we had to do in the locker room, and I kind of savored the moment, took it all in before I went and met my wife and got ready and went out to see my mom and dad and everything out there. So it's been a lot of fun. I've even gotten text messages up until yesterday. I even got one this afternoon from the Georgia State head coach. So I've had guys that I've never even spoke to. I don't even know how they got my number. But I had 125 text messages, and I had about 5 DMs, all from people, just random people that I knew along the way. So it was kind of cool. The other thing that was kind of cool is I had a lot of SoCon coaches that sent me some great messages, guys that are really supportive of the league and that kind of thing. And everyone from Coach Spear up at Western to Coach Hatcher at Sanford, and even Coach Ayers, retired coach from Wofford there, sent me a great message. So it was really brought a smile to my face, and I spent about the first hour or so of the bus ride home just returning messages. Yeah,
I was going to ask you. You just answered a few of my questions that I was planning on asking you, and we will talk about the game itself and, of course, the players and their performance out there. But I'm curious and have some questions from your side of things, from your perspective. And you just answered one of the questions, the amount of messages that you did get and how long it took to get back to them. What was one, not to single anybody out, but what was one of the coolest messages that you did get after that win that meant something to you?
Well, I'm trying to run through them. Of course, Coach DeBerry did. He's always a huge supporter of ours. And like I said, the one from Coach Ayers was really nice, being that he's a kind of an old school kind of triple option guy. So He knows both those guys are pretty cool ones there. But really, to go back through them, like I said, I thought the SoCon coaches were pretty cool. I went back to a guy that I had in college, sent me a message. He sent me a Facebook message. Some guys that I played with, some guys that I hadn't heard from in years, and it's amazing through social media and Twitter about how you can get in touch with people. So I've really been, enjoying that and reconnecting. I actually got one that had played for my dad back in the mid-'80s, and really, he lives down in Florida now. I did a little bit of coaching in high school level. Saw me, tracked me down through Facebook. And made sure that he sent me congratulatory. That was kind of nice. A guy that I looked up to when I was a younger kid, about probably 9 or 10 years old.
You're like an NBA star now when they get that first contract, and all of a sudden kids are like kindergarten are reaching out to them trying to reconnect.
Yeah, for different reasons. I'm quite out the billfold.
Absolutely. But a special win on Saturday. You mentioned, being able to take that moment and soak it in. I remember last year talking to you about your first game as the Citadel head coach, if you had that opportunity for that first game to, just take a breath and look around and realize the situation that you were in. So, as you said, you went back out to the field afterwards, able to soak in that win a little bit for Georgia Tech. Obviously a huge win for the program, for the team, but for you personally, what does a win like that mean for a head coach at the Citadel?
Well, it was kind of nice because I was the assistant coach when we had the South Carolina win, and I was in the box. So that was a completely different feeling. There was a completely different atmosphere there up in the box, and we went right to the locker room from there. I actually got an opportunity to enjoy it from field level, and it was a little bit unique and a little bit strange, and I'll tell you a little bit story there is, so all of a sudden somebody popped up with my daughter out there. That's how I ended up with Emma at the TV interview. It was one of the cheerleaders had handed her to me, and I was like, well, I better take her so nobody else gets her, right? So I picked her up there, and she's one to wander off on her own, so I couldn't just leave her by my side. So I had to pick her up and carry her, and it was the first time that I think she's ever been at a loss for words when the TV camera was on. So I had grabbed her, and then so I had her with me the whole time, and And I did the TV interview, and I'm looking around and everything's starting to vacate a little bit. So I was like, oh, man, everybody must be in the locker room. I get back in the locker room, and there's not a soul in there. I'm looking in the showers. I'm looking in the coach's room, and, there's 70-something guys that should be in there.
Right.
I'm like looking around. I didn't know what to do. So I started my way back out, and Em and I were just kind of hanging out outside the locker room. And finally the guys started to come in, so I had to wait, and I congratulated every single one of them as they came in.
Cool.
But I was looking to party down in the locker room with the guys, and they were still out there partying with the fans, which was kind of cool. So they all came in, and then they started throwing the water around and everything else and having a really good time with it. And I get back out, and I said what I had to say. Em and I go back out onto the field, and she was complaining that everybody was throwing Gatorade on her.
Jeez.
But we had a good time. So I brought her back out onto the field, and I looked around, and I was looking for Tiffany out on the field, and we were just hanging out, and I was just soaking it all in, and she was standing next to me. I think she was just tired, but she was standing next to me and taking it all in with me, which was kind of a neat moment to be able to share with Emma.
Yeah, certainly. That's awesome. I know you hit the trifecta. First, you beat an ACC team, then you got your daughter on national TV there, and then you wished your wife a happy birthday on national TV. So you checked all the boxes.
Yeah, I certainly had to do something because I missed it earlier on in the day. I did send her a text message right before pregame because we had FaceTime, and I had been talking to the girls, and I'd gotten sidetracked, of course, and I forgot completely that it was her birthday until about 30, 40 minutes later go by. So I sent her a message, and then, of course, I had to make up for it somehow.
Yeah, you did good. Hit the trifecta there Saturday in Atlanta. You mentioned what your parents were at the game as well? Yeah,
it was neat because not only did I have my mom and my dad there, but my dad's defensive coordinator for many years, a guy that I had grown up with, played plenty of golf with, a guy that had been on the sidelines with me when I was the ball boy there, and I looked up to him as the defensive coordinator. He was able to make the game. Was going to come to the Alabama game last year and wasn't going to miss the game in Atlanta this year. So it was pretty cool to have him there as well.
And as you mentioned, the players after the win went into the stands. Great fan support. Obviously, I know the freshmen made the trip, but over in that corner there behind your bench in the southeast corner of the stadium filled with the Citadel blue, and nice to be able to have a win and have plenty of people to celebrate it with on the road like that.
That was reminiscent of the South Carolina win too. Is all the guys rushed to a similar corner in our end zone right there, and from the pictures and from seeing it from above, I remember that part of it at the South Carolina game as well. So to see our guys go out there and celebrate with the fans, and of course give a tip of the cap to the Corps cadets up there, that was kind of neat having them, and they did. They got rowdy up there. You heard them, and it was it made for a really cool atmosphere behind you to the point where I think the Georgia Tech band got a little bit frustrated at our guys out there, which was cool.
Yeah, I agree. And it made for certainly a cool atmosphere, especially on the road like that. And we will get into the X's and O's and the matchup and some of the performances, but a couple of things that I still want to touch on. I watched the TV replay Sunday when we got back here to town, and plenty of shots of you as you would expect throughout the game, and you were very stoic throughout from the kickoff until finally the win, and you went running with the finger in the air. But throughout the game, whether it was the Godek field goal in the final 2 minutes, you had the same expression on your face, whether it was a touchdown early on to take the lead, very cool demeanor throughout the game. But what was going on inside your head or emotionally for you throughout that game? Well,
first of all, was I had my peaks and my valleys there, but number one is you couldn't show it. Number one is you had to keep it cool and calm. And I learned that a little bit after the Alabama game when we were close and tied at halftime. The story is, I was walking, like I was winning the Masters or something. I slowed myself down. I had to make sure that everything was calm inside as much as I possibly could so that I can think clearly, especially when I knew the way the game was going. We had the lead going into halftime. We were doing a pretty good job of being stingy with the ball. We were maintaining possession of the football. So I wanted to make sure that I was able to think clearly at the end. You don't want to exhaust too much energy there to where you just get mentally fatigued at the end of the game when you really need to kind of keep your eye on your timeouts. You got to keep an eye on your what your special teams are doing and when you're going to go for it on fourth down and your gut feeling and those kind of things. And that's one thing that I've aimed to improve, and I did that a little bit in the offseason. I studied a lot more analytics in the offseason and end-of-game scenarios and end-of-half scenarios where you can be better as a head coach. That's what I aim to improve this past year. And one of the things is maintaining a little bit of a composure, but also a clear thought process as well through those situations. And I think that's where I was trying to keep everything under control. Plus, I thought we were pretty good. I mean, we were doing a good job on defense. We were doing a good job of, like I said, being methodical on offense. Special teams was the one thing that can scare you because of their speed and space.
And then when the game was over and you did win and you were able to finally enjoy it, on the TV copy, I saw you jumped on somebody. Who was it there that had to catch you?
So that was Kevin Yeager, our equipment guy. He happened to be right behind me. Well, go back to the first game, the Mercer game. He happened to be right next to me, and we had hit a field goal in that game to seal the game off, and it was a close game. Well, I turned around and I kind of like chest bumped him, and I jacked him pretty good, and he'll never let me forget that. So this time, instead of that, I hugged him instead of pounding him in the chest a little bit with excitement. So that was the first guy that I saw that I wanted to grab and hug, and it was a phenomenal moment. And of course, it was captured on TV over and over, and I got it on Twitter a couple times.
That's funny. Well, it's a good thing he caught you after what happened at Mercer. After what you just said about being able to keep your composure and even keel throughout, to be able to stay on top of your decision making, you also alluded to the fact that you guys did play well, really from start to finish, and you controlled a lot of that game. So at any point, was it challenging? Did you ever get ahead of yourself or let yourself think like, hey, we're doing pretty well here, we're about to beat an ACC team, or were you always able to keep your mind about yourself, just focusing on that particular play?
No, I caught myself a couple times. I really did. I caught myself thinking about, man, this really could go. And to the point where I think it helped me out in a little regard is that way is you're going to put the pedal down a little bit more. When you have an opportunity like that, you better take advantage because it doesn't come around very often. It's very rare that you can beat an FBS school, any FBS school these days anymore. And the fact that we had 2 opportunities in the last 6 years certainly was exciting. So I wanted to make sure that we seized this opportunity. So I really was pressing the coaching. I was pressing everything that we were doing to make sure that we didn't do it as a coaching staff, that we were operating with, everybody was on board with what we were getting done. Everything from the reverse that was called to when and how we were going to kick that field goal and when we were going to call our timeouts. I was on the defensive side when we were going to try to ice and freeze the kicker. All those different scenarios have got to be well thought out, and sometimes I'll use them, I bang ideas off of some guys up in the booth, whether it's Coach Orlando up there doing a good job of making sure that we freeze the kicker at the right time. Coach Hodges up there with clock management, and Coach Rucker with clock management. Those are the guys that I lean on up there.
You never trailed in the game. You scored first. You led for the majority. You possessed the football for the majority. You're on the road against an ACC program. You played really well throughout. At what point did you realize that, hey, not only can we win this game, we're winning the battle. We can pull this off. We are outplaying an ACC team today.
Halftime, we were up 14-10 at half, and I felt like we were in control of what we were doing. My only concern was, okay, what's the halftime adjustment? What is their halftime adjustment, and what can we do differently? And really, what don't we want to do? And at the end of the halftime, I said to the coach, I said, just don't let me call something stupid. If we need to take a chance, we need to take a chance. But otherwise, let's go ahead and let's do what's been working. I think our offensive line is controlling the line of scrimmage, and that's number one for us. Our running backs are running well. Brandon was running pretty well for us. So we had control of everything that we needed to control. We just didn't want to do anything dumb with the ball.
Coming off that win against Georgia Tech, as we talk with the head coach of the Bulldogs, Coach Brent Thompson, here on the Coaches Show, with you till the top of the hour at the Marina Variety Store Restaurant. And we will look ahead to the Charleston Southern game as well, but still recapping this historic win for the Citadel. First ever win against an ACC team, first ever win against Georgia Tech, and as Coach mentioned, the second win now in the last 5 years against an FBS team. After that win against Georgia Tech, the couple of days since then, does it help, or even when you go into the locker room after the game, does it help illustrate the things that you have been preaching all along to show that that plan come to fruition for you guys in such a big way against Georgia Tech?
Well, it did, and there's two things. There's two sides of that coin. Is Coach Collins said it in his press conference, and that was preparation. Their preparation wasn't good, and if your preparation is not good, you're going to have a hard time winning football games, especially when your teams like us and even Georgia Tech right now is finding their way, making sure that they are a fundamental team is the number one thing when you're trying to find your way, and it's every week for us. Is we know that we're going to be outmanned man for man out there. So we've got to be a fundamental and a physical team. And if we can do that, we've got a chance. Well, we did that in practice the week leading up to. And that's what I preached to the team at the end on Sunday was put that away, number one. Number two is prepare like you're preparing for Georgia Tech every single week, and you got a pretty good chance.
Well, we'll continue to talk about the game at Georgia Tech. We'll get into the X's and O's. The Bulldogs now ranked as well as they get ready for Charleston Southern. We'll cover all of that coming up here on the Coach's Show from the Marina Variety Store Restaurant at 17 Lockwood Drive here every Wednesday night throughout the football season. You can come join us in person. Otherwise, of course, listen on the radio or watch it online, however you're with us here tonight, as we'll continue to recap the historic win for the Bulldogs. Get ready for the rivalry game this Saturday as well with the head coaches. The Coach's Show here from the Marina Variety Store and Restaurant on ESPN Radio, 94.7 FM and 910 AM.
Families of the Fallen. Style. Selection. Service. Quality. Value. See what everyone is talking about. Ashley Furniture Home Store.
Charleston Crab House has been serving locals and visitors alike for the last 20 years. We have our crispy whole flounder. We have the seared ahi tuna. You name it, in the seafood business, we have it.
Be sure to stop by the Tiger and Leaf Lounge whenever you visit our locations. We have many frozen and specialty drinks, awesome margaritas. One of my favorites is the Wapu Punch.
If you don't like it down in the historic district, come over to James Island, sit on the Intercoastal Waterway. It is an unbelievable view where it's southern seafood at sensible prices and a darn good time.
It's hard to get something right the first time, or even the 25th. To become an expert requires a lot of hard work. But ultimately, the more experienced you are, the better you become. The doctors and team at Roper St. Francis Healthcare are the area's most experienced. We mend the most adult hearts, we perform the most joint replacements, and we treat the most adult cancers. When it comes to what matters most, your health, choose the most experienced team. Roper St. Francis Healthcare. Experience matters.
Seals Outboard has been selling quality products for over 50 years. Products like Sea Hunt Boats with its exclusive Carolina Flare Vortex hull design for the driest, smoothest, most comfortable ride on the water. Located in Mount Pleasant and Charleston, Seals Outboard is a 5-star certified dealer for Yamaha outboards. Your boating adventures are endless in possibilities with a boat from Seals Outboard. See us at sealsoutboard.com.
This is the Pepsi for serious fans and serious eats. This is the Pepsi for Sundays at the ballpark and days off at your favorite pizza joint. Right, Aaron?
Best slice in New York.
Whatever you're craving, this is the Pepsi for you.
How do we make sure there's toppings in each bite of Papa John's pizza? We check 80,000 times a year. Now get an extra large 2-topping pizza for just $11. Everyone's doing their part to make your game day better. How do we make sure there's toppings in each bite of Papa John's pizza? We check 80,000 times a year. Now get an extra large 2-topping pizza for just $11. Everyone's doing their part to make your game day better.
Pizza with Pepsi. Delicious.
Mark Lee became the first Navy SEAL killed in Iraq, sacrificing his life for our freedoms and his SEAL teammates. America's Mighty Warriors was born out of Mark's challenge to pass on the kindness, the love, the precious gift of human life. We honor our troops and Gold Star families by providing programs that assist recovery after injury or loss. Partner with us by making a generous donation. Text MARK to 234-231-9284. America's Mighty Warriors, supporting our troops and the families of the fallen. Style. Selection.
We're in a variety store restaurant here at 17 Lockwood Rockwood Drive in downtown Charleston for the Coaches Show. The head coach of the Citadel Bulldogs, Coach Brent Thompson, and the Bulldogs coming off that win against Georgia Tech, getting ready for Charleston Southern this Saturday at Johnson Haygood Stadium. 6 o'clock kickoff. Coverage will begin locally if you can't make it to the game at 4 o'clock here in the Low Country, and the pregame show at 5 o'clock as well from the stadium. And the stadium show at 5 o'clock will kick off at 6. So, Coach, you get the win against Georgia Tech, and we'll get into some more X's and O's and the matchup with the Yellow Jackets Saturday. But you get that win, and then you wake up here at the start of the week and you find the Bulldogs ranked from a few different publications as well. What did that mean for you as the head coach of this program?
Well, it didn't mean a whole lot for me. The first thing John texted me and I said, "Oh boy, here we go." It's really the last thing that we needed at that moment. Is we need to continue to play hungry. I thought we felt coming off the Elon game that we certainly didn't play our best, and that we were a much better team than that. And you never want to feel as a coach that they've arrived, especially our program. We need to play with an edge all the time. So that was what I didn't address it with the team at all. I let it go out there. We needed to get our feet back on the ground and start going back on Sunday because we do practice on Sundays. That was the number one thing that we needed to do, was just get back to reality. Put that game away from us, and this is a very good Charleston Southern team.
So along those lines, what have you done because of that win? Then you have the ranking. Everyone's talking about it. We're still talking about it here on Wednesday night, the interviews. What have you done as a coach, if anything differently, to make sure you put that behind you, focus on the next one?
Well, I addressed it head on. Number one is you address it head on with the team. Number two, I addressed it with the media. I told them on the Monday press conference that this was going to be it. I'm going to be very brief with it. It was a good football game. It was a good win. We played on our terms. I thought we played well enough to win, obviously. But we need to move on. We need to not worry about who's slapping us on the back right now, and we need to kind of focus on Charleston Southern because this is a very good football team. It's not an 0-3 program. It's a team that's probably hungry for a win right now and played extremely well against a very good North Carolina A&T team.
Well, then humor me as we continue to look back before looking ahead and go back to that Georgia Tech game. The Bulldogs, you guys for the first time this year did score first. That passing touchdown in the middle of the first quarter took the lead, never trailed in that game. How different was it for your offense to be able to play with the lead from the beginning this time compared to the first two games?
Yeah, we're built for that. We're built to play from the lead. And on that particular drive, we said going into it that we're going to be aggressive. And we had moved the ball very effectively down the field. We'd caught them with a couple of veer plays. Got a couple big runs out of that drive. That was the second drive of the game. And I felt it was a good opportunity for us to at least take a chance because we knew that if we were getting close enough, we were going for it on fourth down. We were in the red zone. We had to get it to maybe, it was a 1st and 10 call. I think we had to get it to maybe like 2 or 3 yards of where we were going to go for it. So it was a good opportunity for us to take a chance, take a shot. And I didn't think it would score, but I thought it would at least get us down inside the 5 or so. And it turns out where they got twisted around, the guy that was supposed to cover him ended up covering the other guy. And Brandon did a good job of finding the open receiver. It's a play that we hang our hat on. It's a tough play to defend, especially when we've got all the other run game coming at you.
Touchdown pass now in every game this year. Obviously, we know it's an offense that doesn't pass a ton, but when you have thrown the football, there's been some explosive plays, especially with Riley Webb. What do you feel? How have you liked the passing game so far through 3 games this year?
We're effective and efficient. I mean, we were 1 for 4, but we do when we do take our chances and we make them pay off. And that's the number one thing we've got to do is when you take shots, you get better, make them pay off. And we did in the last 3 games, and we've got to continue to do so and continue to develop that. That's the one thing that I always say about our offense is we're going to find open receivers. We just got to get the ball there. We got to protect it and get it there. If we can do that, then we're going to have a pretty good day.
Riley Webb with a touchdown catch now in 4 straight games. He's a receiver that obviously isn't used as much as maybe some other offenses and their receivers, but he always seems to have big play ability for you guys.
Riley's he's the guy. He's the guy up that we're going to be able to take our chances with, take our shots with. He's big, tall, physical, and runs extremely well. And he's developed himself as a pretty good wide receiver. The guy that plays next to him is no slouch. Ryan McCarthy can make any catch out there, and he can go out there and hit home runs for the baseball team. He's a guy that really is just as good as Raleigh, may not have Raleigh speed.
An interception in each of the first 3 games for an offense that doesn't throw a ton. Different situations. End of the game, you're trying to throw, you're trying to move the ball downfield, doing something different than what Brandon Rainey is normally asked to do. When you look at those turnovers from the passing game, any concern there, or you understand the circumstances and it's understandable?
Well, in the first 2 games, those were circumstances. In the Georgia Tech game, different story. We had the guy open. He just put the wrong type of pass in there. He tried to fit one in a little bit too tight. If we get it over the head, we probably get down maybe a manageable 4th fourth down at that point because we had gotten the chop block penalty and a holding penalty. I believe was the series of events that led us to that. So we ended up having to try to throw and get at least back into field goal range, which took us out of it with the two penalties. We just put it the wrong kind of throw. We needed to throw one over the head. Didn't quite make it in there on that. The one in the Towson game was probably my fault, as I probably should have called a different play to get a 2-minute drive going. I was trying to take a shot a little bit too far down the field. And then 2 weeks ago in the Elon game, that was end of the game, just trying to make something happen there in the 2-minute drill. We had one final snap probably there.
I know it looked like he was working hard to try to get back into the game on Saturday. How's he progressing now, a couple days removed from Georgia Tech?
Good. He's gotten a lot of his range of motion back. He's day-to-day out there right now. He's doing a little bit of work with us. I think if he can go, he'll definitely go.
And if not, then you have Murdaugh, who finished out the game Saturday against Georgia Tech. I mean, how impressed were you? First time he played Charleston Southern last year, a couple of snaps there at the end of the game, but first real run for him. He goes out there fourth quarter against Georgia Tech, and he's able to keep the offense rolling and get you a win.
Yeah, not an ideal scenario to come into. Number one was just letting him operate a little bit in there. Don't make him operate too much, but make him move the football. The one thing that he did was he got positive yards, and he made sure that we got the snap every single time. And then, when we needed to take a little bit of a risk, we took a risk with him. But to be honest with you, he just did a good job of managing the game and managing the offense at that point.
If he is under center Saturday, what can we look to see? Is he a guy that you feel comfortable throwing the football with? Is he more of just the running quarterback? What do you look for from him when he's out there?
No, Brian's a very efficient thrower. Mm-hmm. Brian's probably better than Brandon at throwing it. Not quite as the runner that Brandon is, but he can still get the job done. And he knows all the offense. He's been here long enough where he can function as a quarterback. The only thing that he really needed was to be the starter all week long, as he needed to be game prepped all week long, which he's gotten some pretty good reps with Brandon not taking as many reps this week.
Anybody listening to the radio broadcast thought that Schickel had the best game he's never played in because of the number mix-up. But, talking to you guys during the week, despite the conspiracy theories, that was all unintentional. He had no idea that there was even something going on with all the jerseys.
I had no idea until after. I wish I had that much forethought in it. I would look like a genius out there. But no, Schickel was in a 20s number. We didn't want to have an opportunity to stick him out there in a 20s number unless you're Doug Flutie wearing 22 out there. That's the only time it's cool. So putting Schickel out there, if he had the opportunity to go in, we want him to be in at least a normal number.
I think Bernie Kosar, too, right? Was in the 20s?
That's right.
On the defensive side, there was a collision there in the fourth quarter. Phil Davis and I think it was Barrett went down. Are both those guys doing okay?
Yeah, both are back practicing right now. Yep.
That's good to see. Davis there from the area and able to walk off and both progressing now. Offensively, third down this year, you're converting on more than 50% of your third downs. You were at 50% Saturday against Georgia Tech. Of course, helps the offense rolling. And in large part, it seems, from my perspective, because you've been able to stay ahead of the chains and you've had a lot of third and shorts.
Manageable. And part of that is game management, and part of it is analytics. Is we know what we're going to do before we do it. Is if we've got to get it to a manageable field position, we do. And if we can stay on track as an offense, that's what we do. It helps play calling. It helps with being able to set up your next play and when you're going to take your chances, when you're going to take your shots, and what are your opportunities to do that. Because you have very few opportunities in our offense to take a little bit of a risk and a little bit of a chance. And when you do, is that you better make it pay off. And that's what we've been able to do on first and second down, being a little bit better. And then that makes third down that much better.
And then when you did get to a fourth down, or really whenever you've gotten to a fourth down, you've converted all but one that you've gone for. You've been really good on fourth downs. And you mentioned it earlier, there was that 4th and 1, your side of the field, right around the 30, on that final drive there in the fourth quarter. You decided to go for it. You picked it up. Take us through the thought process and the play to make sure you converted and kept that drive going.
Well, number one is I think we had to maintain possession of the ball. Mm-hmm. That was the number one thing. Is I didn't want to have an opportunity to put their offense back on the field with a little bit of space that late in the game. So I thought it was imperative that we go ahead and stay on the field. I believe at that point we were tied, so we had to go down there and kick the field goal in order for them to come back and kick the field goal again. So we needed to make something happen, and I could sense that something was going to happen right there. Our offensive line was moving fairly well. It wasn't really even much of a thought in my mind. I knew probably going into it that on third down that we had 2 downs to get the first down there. And with the way that Clay had been running, we had no problems with it. We were going to hand the ball off and make sure that he was going to be able to get the yards that we needed to get it in there. So, yeah, really, it was probably one of the easier decisions of the day.
The other play call we just mentioned a few moments ago about Riley Webb and his big playability, and he always seems to make plays at the biggest times. The other play call that was getting talked a lot about after that win was the end around with Riley Webb that went for the first down.
Yeah, the reverse. We'd call it a reverse in every single game, and we do to keep the backside honest. The other two didn't pan out so well for us. But really, with the way that they were starting to play us, they were pressing to get negative yardage plays, which is what a defense does in those scenarios, which forces them to squeeze the box and squeeze the edges a little bit more. The young man that we had to get around was very athletic, and he has very long range, and that was my number one concern. They got into the defense that we had thought that they were going to be in, called the reverse, and Raleigh just made it around. And once he got around it, it was a good 12, 13-yard gain. If we had a little bit better block on the corner, could have gone for a little bit more yards. But really, no, that was probably the play to get us into their territory that helped us out and really just get us in the field goal range.
Now, Clay Harris did lead the team in terms of carries as the B-back, but it seemed like when you were running it with the A-backs or when you were running that triple option or the veer that you wanted to get on the outside. And it looked like, especially as the game went on, you tried to get more in the perimeter and outside the numbers and running it off tackle. Was that a specific plan going in?
We did. We knew that we were going to have to spread them out a little bit because of all the inside runs that we were going to have early on in the game. We wanted to establish more of what we didn't do in the Elon game, and that was establish the fullback. And it's always the way that a triple option offense wants to start off the day, is establishing their fullback before they can get the ball to the perimeter. And once we're able to get the ball to the perimeter, it's a lot easier of a day. In the first quarter, we had a couple of veers that got out on them. We knew that we weren't going to make a living trying to fool them and try to get them to the perimeter all day, so we had to keep them honest to the inside. But guys like Nikim, who's a tremendous blocker, he had a good day running the football. It just happened to be one of those days for him out there on the perimeter. And, of course, Dante. Dante's always he's played well in those FBS games and scored another touchdown for us. So we found a way to get the ball to the edge a little bit when we needed to.
I was going to ask you about Dante because it seems like, not that he doesn't play well in the SoCon, but against those big teams, he always brings his best, whether it was Alabama last year or he had his touchdown now on that same sideline, right down you guys into the pylon. We went twisting in. He saves his best for those big teams.
I tell you what, he had a tremendous game. He may not have showed in the yards, but he certainly had the one touchdown for us. But blocking, the week before from where he was at to where he was playing this week against Georgia Tech, completely night and day. He played extremely well and things away from the football that you really wouldn't see or know unless you watch the film.
That was a bit of an awkward play. Did you know there was a touchdown when Dante went in?
No, I had no idea. The official that called it wasn't until I saw it on film, was tucked back in close to the cheerleader range in there, and I had no idea. They spotted the ball on the 3-yard line. Well, I knew we weren't out at the 3-yard line there. So I had to grab the line judge and ask him why was the ball spotted at the 3-yard line. And he said he called it a touchdown. I said, well, nobody signaled the touchdown. And he said, no, the guy was tucked back in there, so they had to review it. And the guy gives me a heads up once they review it that it's coming down and it's going to be a touchdown, which gives us an opportunity to get the field goal or the PAT team out there. Those are weird scenarios. You don't know what to do. You don't know whether to keep your offense out there. As a play caller, you're sitting there trying to figure out what's going to put the ball in the end zone. What's the next call?
Yeah, it was a very anticlimactic touchdown. And up in the booth, we didn't see him either. We had no idea what the call was, touchdown or not, until we saw a replay and the referee came on the microphone. I do want to ask you about one other call, was the 12-man on the field. Did you get any sort of explanation for why they thought at one point there was 12 guys on the field and it turns out we just miscounted?
I think that was great. He came up to me. He goes, no, I was down. Don't worry. He goes, he took complete blame for it. He goes, I don't know what I was thinking right there. He was great about it. He came in and apologized to me. Unfortunately, it was probably an 8-yard gain on the play. But I walked up to him and I said, look, I only replaced the quarterback. The quarterback came out on an injury. I said, I know the formation that's supposed to be out there. There's only 11. I thought you were counting the defensive guys. No. He goes, no, it was my job. He goes, I was stupid. I don't know what I was thinking. He goes, I was getting hot and tired.
Yeah, I don't blame him. That was the first time I saw that. I came back on and they said, no, only 11 guys at least.
Well, they reviewed it, which was nice. They had review,
right.
And they can obviously count in the review booth.
Yeah, and able to get it right, which was the most important thing. We'll continue to talk about the Georgia Tech game. We'll also look ahead towards the Charleston Southern game coming up this Saturday as well. 6 o'clock kickoff at Johnson Haygood Stadium for the crosstown rivalry and the battle for the low country with the Charleston Southern Buccaneers this Saturday at the Marina Variety Store Restaurant in downtown Charleston, 17 Lockwood Drive, where we are every Wednesday night during the football season with you till 8 o'clock. It's the Coaches Show with the head coach Brent Thompson right here on ESPN Radio, 94.7 FM and 910 AM.
Service. Quality, value. See what everyone is talking about. Ashley Furniture Home Store.
Charleston Crab House has been serving locals and visitors alike for the last 20 years. We have our crispy whole flounder. We have the seared ahi tuna. You name it, in the seafood business, we have it.
Be sure to stop by the Tiger and Leaf Lounge whenever you visit our locations. We have many frozen and specialty drinks, awesome margaritas. One of my favorites is the Wapu Punch.
If you don't like it down in the historic district, come over to James Island, sit on the Intercoastal Waterway. It is an unbelievable view where it's southern seafood at sensible prices and a darn good time.
It's hard to get something right the first time, or even the 25th. To become an expert requires a lot of hard work. But ultimately, the more experienced you are, the better you become. The doctors and team at Roper St. Francis Healthcare are the area's most experienced. We mend the most adult hearts, we perform the most joint replacements, and we treat the most adult cancers. When it comes to what matters most, your health, choose the most experienced team. Roper St. Francis Healthcare. Experience matters.
Seals Outboard has been selling quality products for over 50 years. Products like Sea Hunt Boats with its exclusive Carolina Flare Vortex hull design for the driest, smoothest, most comfortable ride on the water. Located in Mount Pleasant and Charleston, Seals Outboard is a 5-star certified dealer for Yamaha outboards. Your boating adventures are endless in possibilities with a boat from Seals Outboard. See us at sealsoutboard.com.
This is the Pepsi for serious fans and serious eats. This is the Pepsi for Sundays at the ballpark and days off at your favorite pizza joint. Right, Aaron?
Best slice in New York.
Whatever you're craving, this is the Pepsi for you.
How do we make sure there's toppings in each bite of Papa John's pizza? We check 80,000 times a year. Now get an extra large 2-topping pizza for just $11. Everyone's doing their part to make your game day better. How do we make sure there's toppings in each bite of Papa John's pizza? We check 80,000 times a year. Now get an extra large 2-topping pizza for just $11. Everyone's doing their part to make your game day better.
Pizza with Pepsi. Delicious.
Mark Lee became the first Navy SEAL killed in Iraq, sacrificing his life for our freedoms and his SEAL teammates. America's Mighty Warriors was born out of Mark's challenge to pass on the kindness, the love, the precious gift of human life. We honor our troops and Gold Star families by providing programs that assist recovery after injury or loss. Partner with us by making a generous donation. Text MARK to 234-231-9284. America's Mighty Warriors, supporting our troops and the families of the fallen.
Style. Selection. Service.
Back at the Marina Variety Store Restaurant here at 17 Lockwood Drive for the Coaches Show. The head coach, Brent Thompson, as we put a bow on the win against Georgia Tech and then look ahead to the game against Charleston Southern. Coach, if this question comes from someone in the audience, if all 12 mascots were to be in a battle royale in the Southern Conference, would anybody be able to beat the Bulldog?
The problem is you got another Bulldog in the conference, too. I mean, I don't know what to do there. That could be the key dead. I mean, what do you do with the key dead out there?
That's true.
Nobody knows what that guy's going to do. I mean, is it a kangaroo out there? I'm not really sure. If it's a kangaroo, then he may have us all whipped. But to be honest with you, I think it's going to come down to the key dead or maybe the two Bulldogs ganging up on the key dead, and we'd have a chance.
Yeah, I take my chances with the Citadel Bulldog, of course. Those air raid guys, they only focus on half the the offense, so they get to spend their time thinking about all these other things. Going back to that Georgia Tech game, offensive line seemed to play great. Don't want to single anyone out, but Drew McIntyre especially, it seems like was always leading the way. Offensive line, in order to run as well as you guys did, I imagine you were pleased with their performance.
Yeah, Drew did a good job, and Drew was focused all week long. He was a little bit disturbed maybe that he wasn't recruited by Georgia Tech, and let me know that early on in the week. And so he had a great week of practice. I knew he was going to be focused and ready to go, and he certainly did. I thought he had a great game, came off the ball extremely well, fired off the ball, and really did everything that we had asked him to do. They were moving the line up front. Number one thing is they were running linebackers through gaps, and when you run linebackers through gaps, you got to catch those guys, and you got to catch them somewhere around the line of scrimmage with a full head of steam right there, and Drew did a good job of being able to back those guys off of us.
On the defensive side of football, first play from scrimmage, they get that pass down the sideline, and I was thinking, uh-oh. But defensively, you guys really settled, and you played really well, especially as the game went on, to hold them to the field goal at the end of the game, and then to back them up in overtime, force the missed field goal. You must have been pleased with the defensive side as well.
We held tight. Now, we still missed a couple of open field tackles, but really, we were able to get in the backfield. That was the number one thing that impressed me, is our defensive line was able to at least penetrate the offensive line, create a couple of negative yardage plays, and make the quarterback think. The number one thing that we wanted to do was make him be a quarterback, a traditional quarterback back there. The one thing that we didn't want to let him do was what they started doing at the end of the game, and then that was make him a runner. Mm-hmm. They realized what they were getting on the defensive side, and they were getting a lot of different looks. They're getting a lot of different blitzes from Coach Grantham and the defensive staff, that they were just going to make it a quarterback run game, and that kind of fell into our hands a little bit as long as we didn't let him out.
Yeah, after that first completion, they didn't have another one until the third quarter, and the defense played well throughout. That final sequence was really odd with everything that was going on, whether it was the 10-second runoff or where it looked like they had the go-ahead touchdown. On that last play with about 6 seconds left where Oliver ran into the end zone, did you know a touchdown was called, or did you think that they just took the lead?
No. I knew that there was a timeout that was called. I had kind of heard the whistle, and I saw our guys that had stopped playing. It was all too reminiscent of the Pharaoh Cooper when we were offside, or they had the illegal man in motion there in the South Carolina game. They were, of course, backed up on the other end of the field, but Pharaoh Cooper caught the ball and ran all the way down. But we all kind of knew that it was dead. There was a flag on the field, so it was kind of the same feeling that we had. That was like, oh, but there's a stoppage of play. So yeah, you could see clearly on film that we had about 7 or 8 guys that didn't play anymore.
Yeah, certainly. And the Bulldogs, and I think this is never a concern for players that come from the Citadel, but in a game like that, and it reminded me of Alabama last year where there were a lot of unsportsmanlike penalties, some chippiness, maybe more stuff from the other side, maybe trying to intimidate the quote-unquote smaller team, but your guys never seem to give in, and certainly throughout this game, and even Alabama last year, bigger, taller, better, highly recruited players, whatever you want to call them, they never seem to be intimidated out there against those guys.
Yeah, we have a way of needling those kind of people, and it's just the way that we play. A little bit of it is edge, and a little bit of it is like, you guys shouldn't be playing this hard against us, and you guys really shouldn't be in this football game, and that gets our guys even more motivated. They understand. They play with a little bit of chip on their shoulder. They know where they are, and they know what team that they're going to be, and that's kind of the way that I like them. I like them to play a little bit with a little bit of an edge there, up until the point where we get a 15-yard penalty, and then we got to back down a little bit.
Speaking of being never intimidated, Jacob Godek, of course, the field goal, final 2 minutes to first put you on top, and then in overtime hits the game winner, kicking it right into the student section and the band there. Know about the struggles 2 years ago, had a great bounce-back season last year, the kick against Alabama, and then these 2 kicks against Georgia Tech. I mean, he's been as good as gold here lately. Yeah,
never a doubt, and even the one that he missed, I didn't doubt that one. It was clearly long enough. He just missed it, and that's probably my fault. I had him on the wrong hash. I probably didn't do a good enough job of managing that situation. I took a chance at running a play that was going to hopefully score, get us the first down, and maintain possession. And because I think if we go up 2 scores right there, I think it's a winner in regulation. But we ended up getting the ball batted down, lost a little bit of yards, left us on the right hash, and Jacob, just missed it and barely missed it. But I had never any second thoughts. I mean, I played for the field goal in overtime when we had stopped him.
Speaking of Godek special teams, and go back to that Alabama game, when we spoke in the pregame for Saturday's game against Georgia Tech, and you referenced last year against Alabama playing really well into the second half, and then there was one mistake that seemed to snowball for the team. This past weekend against Georgia Tech, you had that 20-yard punt for Campbell. They come back, score in the very next play, 2-point conversion, tie it up, and all of a sudden, brand new ball game. What was it like on the sideline? Did you say anything? How did the team respond that they didn't let that mistake or that sequence of plays snowball. Instead, you came out, put together a nice drive, and I believe on that very next possession took the lead right back.
Yeah, we did, and part of that was another thing. That was the hardest decision all day long. Was I was very tempted, even though we were deep in our own territory. We had a 4th and 1 right there, and it was a little bit of question on the spot. Was it 2 or 3? And if I had to do it all over again, obviously I would have gone for it. Being that I thought we controlled the offensive line of scrimmage, even though we were deep in our own territory. But we had kicked the ball away, and we certainly given up a pretty big touchdown right there. But our kids never got down. I don't think Brandon never let them get down. We were firmly in control of the line of scrimmage, so that was just all we really needed was just a long drive and a stingy possession to be able to really kind of back them back down again.
Last thing on the Georgia Tech game, then we will look ahead to Charleston Southern. The jerseys. You went with the white pants, or I should say gray pants, white jersey top, which was the same combination for Alabama. I'm told same combination for South Carolina. Was that a planned thing? Is that a superstitious thing, or was that just a coincidence?
Yes, everything. No. It was planned, and it was probably planned ever since last maybe May or June when I put the uniform schedule out. So I don't have to think about it during the year. That was pre-planned, and it was pre-planned based upon the Alabama and the South Carolina game. That has become our FBS uniform. Yeah,
it's worked out pretty well. All right. We'll put that game, a historic win for the Citadel, beating Georgia Tech. First ever win against the Yellow Jackets, first ever win against the ACC, 9th win against an FBS team, and a win that we'll always remember for the history of the Citadel Saturday against Georgia Tech. But we will put that behind us, put a bow on it, and look ahead to the game coming up this Saturday with Charleston Southern as the Bulldogs will try to get back to 500. 6 o'clock kickoff Saturday at Johnson Haygood Stadium. Coverage will begin at 4 o'clock locally on the radio network. And when we come back, we'll dive into the matchup and the X's and O's with the head coach of the Bulldogs, Coach Brent Thompson, here from the Marina Variety Store Restaurant at 17 Lockwood Drive in downtown Charleston, as we're with you till the top of the hour on The Coach's Show, right here on ESPN Radio, 94.7 FM and 910 AM.
Quality. Value. See what everyone is talking about. Ashley Furniture Home Store.
Charleston Crab House has been serving locals and visitors alike for the last 20 years. We have our crispy whole flounder. We have the seared ahi tuna. You name it, in the seafood business, we have it.
Be sure to stop by the Tag and Release Lounge whenever you visit our locations. We have many frozen and specialty drinks, awesome margaritas. One of my favorites is the Wapu Punch.
If you don't like it down in the historic district, come over to James Island, sit on the Intercoastal Waterway. It is an unbelievable view where it's southern seafood at sensible prices and a darn good time.
It's hard to get something right the first time, or even the 25th. To become an expert requires a lot of hard work. But ultimately, the more experienced you are, the better you become. The doctors and team at Roper St. Francis Healthcare are the area's most experienced. We mend the most adult hearts, we perform the most joint replacements, and we treat the most adult cancers. When it comes to what matters most, your health, choose the most experienced team. Roper St. Francis Healthcare. Experience matters.
Seals Outboard has been selling quality products for over 50 years. Products like Sea Hunt Boats with its exclusive Carolina Flare Vortex hull design for the driest, smoothest, most comfortable ride on the water. Located in Mount Pleasant and Charleston, Seals Outboard is a 5-star certified dealer for Yamaha outboards. Your boating adventures are endless in possibilities with a boat from Seals Outboard. See us at sealsoutboard.com.
This is the Pepsi for serious fans and serious eats. This is the Pepsi for Sundays at the ballpark and days off at your favorite pizza joint. Right, Aaron?
Best slice in New York.
Whatever you're craving, this is the Pepsi for you.
How do we make sure there's toppings in each bite of Papa John's pizza? We check 80,000 times a year. Now get an extra large 2-topping pizza for just $11. Everyone's doing their part to make your game day better. How do we make sure there's toppings in each bite of Papa John's pizza? We check 80,000 times a year. Now get an extra large 2-topping pizza for just $11. Everyone's doing their part to make your game day better.
Pizza with Pepsi. Delicious.
Mark Lee became the first Navy SEAL killed in Iraq, sacrificing his life for our freedoms and his SEAL teammates. America's Mighty Warriors was born out of Mark's challenge to pass on the kindness, the love, the precious gift of human life. We honor our troops and Gold Star families by providing programs that assist recovery after injury or loss. Partner with us by making a generous donation. Text MARK to 234-231-9284. America's Mighty Warriors, supporting our troops and the families of the fallen.
Final segment here of the Coaches Show with the head coach Brent Thompson from the Marina Variety Store and Restaurant at 17 Lockwood Drive in Charleston, where we are every Wednesday night during the football season, getting ready for the Bulldogs game this Saturday with Charleston Southern. 6 o'clock kickoff here in Charleston. Coverage begins locally on the dial at 4 o'clock. Coach, going up against Charleston Southern, the big win last year that ended the season against the Buccaneers. Now new head coach for them, almost an entire new coaching staff, new players. Looks like a new quarterback from a year ago. Do you know what to expect from this team, especially on the offensive side of the football, come Saturday?
Well, just based upon their first 3 games, as they are an air raid team. Mm-hmm. But I think he's done a good job of adjusting his personnel, where he still does a pretty good job of running the football and doing what he can do with still a little bit of what was left over from the previous offense. But they put you in a lot of space. I think they've got some really good wide receivers. Cameron Brown's a good wide receiver. The quarterback can certainly get the ball there, and their offensive line is efficient enough to be able to get the ball off in time, which is all the air raid offense is all about.
Defensive coordinator remains the same for them from the last couple seasons. On the defensive side of the football, does the scheme or the defense remain the same as well, or have they made some changes there?
Similar, very similar. There's been a couple of changes there, a couple of slight things that you got to really look hard to find. But the personnel, they've got about half the defense still returning. Still got some pretty good personnel. The linebackers are still all intact. Replaced a couple of defensive linemen and then a couple of guys in the secondary. They
are off to an 0-3 start, which means, of course, they'll be hungry to come in not only for the rivalry game, try to get their first win of the season, and they're coming off a tough loss to a good North Carolina A&T team where they were leading until the fourth quarter. When you watch that film, what did you see from Charleston Southern?
At the end of the day, they just wore out against A&T. They played an exceptional football game. They played a great defensive game against what I thought was a very good, big offensive line for North Carolina A&T. After watching them play against Elon, I thought CSU held their own and really should have won the football game. At the end, they gave up a couple of big plays. The running backs got loose a couple of times out there. But other than that, they didn't give up too much in the first 3 quarters.
Someone did ask online about when you go up against the air raid, since it is an offense that is so different from what you're used to, just running yourself offensively in practice, what do you do to prepare for a team like that that's different than a lot of teams you see, or what you guys do yourself?
Well, there's 2 things. One is they're going to have a hard time simulating you as you're having a hard time simulating them. So you've got to keep that in mind on both sides of the ball. Number 2 is you've got to do a little bit of servicing your defense. And this week and really this year for the first time, as we've done some skelly against our own defense to make sure that they get the proper looks that they do need to help them out. Because we may not have all of the skill guys there, but we have tried to collect as many possible skill guys as possible with our walk-on program and anything in our scout team to make sure that we can simulate as much of a look as possible for those guys to keep them as best that they can schooled up on what they need to get done.
What are some things that you would like to clean up from your team? You have the great win against Georgia Tech, a coach was never satisfied going into this game and then leading into Southern Conference play. What are some things that you're still stressing to your team that you'd like to get cleaned up moving forward?
Number 1 is tackling, and that goes for special teams as well as the defenses. When we get in space, we've got to do a better job of getting them on the ground. Number 2, on the offensive side, turnovers, is if we're going to be a ball control team, we've got to be stingy with possessions. That doesn't mean giving them back over. And the penalties have hurt us, because if we ever get into the chop block scenario like we ran into, or a holding penalty like we ran into on consecutive plays. That's going to be very tough for us to get out of. We're going to, especially when we're deep in the red zone. We're going to get points. I think we're pretty good in the red zone, but we're going to get points if we don't do things like that.
How important is this rivalry and now what has become an annual matchup at Charleston Southern here in the Low Country? How important is this game to be on the schedule to make sure that this happens every year?
And I was a big proponent of it when we lost them. When I first became the head coach, we lost it, and I tried to get him back on the schedule. It was great that Jim had figured out a way to get him back on the schedule for 4 more years. We're in the second year of that deal, and I'd like to continue that. One is it's just an easy game. It's a close game. Number 2 is it means a lot. Our guys see these guys out. They know them. We've got guys on our staff from CSU. We've got a pretty good connection there. I think it's a great in-town rivalry for just low country football, so that helps it out. There's plenty of things to play for with it, and I really do enjoy the game, and I hope we continue to find a way to keep them on the schedule.
They're led by first-year head coach Audrey Denson, who comes in from Notre Dame. Have you had, not just recently since coming to the Low Country, but ever before, you ever have any interactions with him before?
No, never before. I met him for the first time at the Post and Courier Charlie Awards, and that was the only time I've met him.
And you guys will match up Saturday in this game between the Citadel and Charleston Southern. The rivalry here for the battle for the Low Country Saturday with the 6 o'clock kickoff. What would it mean to, of course, not only win a rivalry matchup, but then get back to 2-2 heading into conference play?
Yeah, we need the momentum. Really, we need to respond with a big victory, with another big victory. And that's the number one thing that I was concerned about was don't have a hangover from the party that you just had at Georgia Tech. Mm-hmm. Get back to business. Let's go. Get your feet back on the ground, as there's still plenty of football to be played. We can't be living in the past. We've got to move forward. And what does that say about you if you come off of a win with a not so great showing?
And then you also get to return home. You had the week where you guys were away because of the hurricane, back-to-back road games. I'm sure it'll be nice to run out into that home field Saturday.
Yeah, it certainly will. I mean, that was a rough stretch. You were home, you were away for 5 days, and then you were home, and then you were back on the road again. And that's a little bit of a rough stretch for anybody to go through in preparing a football team. So it'll be good to get back home. Unfortunately, we've got another one coming up next week when we go to Alabama.
Yeah, quite the trip there to begin conference play. I remember asking you the same thing last year on this weekend with the Hall of Fame dinner Friday night. A lot of former players or just Hall of Fame athletes from the Citadel will be back in town this weekend. As the football coach of the football program, A, does this weekend mean anything more to the program? And B, is there anything else that comes along with a weekend like this for the football team, or is it all about the game?
No, it's all about the game for us. We've got a Friday night practice that's part of our schedule. That's helped us out. So I think during most of those events, a couple of years ago, we missed Andy Clausen because he was going into the Hall of Fame. That was about the most effective that we have had on that particular day.
A couple of minutes with you left here, Coach, as we wrap things up, getting ready for Charleston Southern on Saturday. I ask you here on the show each and every week to get ready for the game. What are some of the keys to make sure that you guys come out victorious Saturday?
Well, number one is we've got to be able to force them to drive the ball. They can be a big play potential if they get you in a lot of space. They've got enough pretty good athletes out there to make sure that you got to pay attention to them. The quarterback's good enough to be able to get them the football. We've got to get them on the ground. We've got to tackle them. We've got to make them drive it all the way through. And then offensively, we've got to be able to move the football really from start to finish. We can't have our spurts where we do fairly well and then we don't. We've got to be able to maintain possession of the ball throughout and keep our defense fresh and ready to go for a team that could potentially be a pretty explosive team if you don't watch out.
Do you like the change in the schedule this year compared to last, where last season you jumped right in with Wofford on the road? This year you play the non-conference games before we do start conference play next week.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're just that type of program where we're a rhythm offense. We've got to be able to be in some sort of a rhythm and a groove to be able to get going again, and that certainly helps when you're not having to play a league opponent right away. So we take a little bit. We're going to run about the same plays against different fronts. So we're all about being able to just practice over and over and over again. So that certainly helps us out from an offensive standpoint. From a defensive standpoint, we're playing younger guys, so it helps us out this year that we're not, we're not taking losses against league opponents, and we still got a lot to play for from here on out.
Well, the Bulldogs take on Charleston Southern this Saturday with the rivalry matchup. 6 o'clock kickoff. Coverage will begin at 4 o'clock here locally. If you can't make it to the game, or bring your radio with you and tune in from Johnson Haygood Stadium this Saturday as the Bulldogs try to make it back-to-back wins and get to 2-2 as we wrap up here from the Marina Variety Store and Restaurant. Coach, appreciate the time as always and all your honesty and recapping that great win against Georgia Tech that I'm sure you'll never forget that win. Appreciate the time as always, and the best of luck Saturday.
Next week we're in Salty Mike's.
Yeah, we'll see about that. But from the Marina Variety Store Restaurant here, where you can find us every Wednesday throughout the football season, and we'll be back before that long trip to Sanford to start conference play next week. So, Coach, appreciate the time as always. Best of luck Saturday. 6 o'clock kickoff. Coverage will begin at 4 o'clock locally on the radio network, 102.1 FM, 92.1 FM, 1450 AM here in Charleston, and the Coach's Show every Wednesday right here on ESPN Radio from the Marina Variety Store and Restaurant. Kickoff 6 o'clock, Citadel and Charleston Southern from Johnson Haygood Stadium. For the coach Brent Thompson, I'm Luke Morrow. We'll catch up with you Saturday with the Bulldogs and Charleston Southern.
Thanks, Luke.